What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Brojo Emotionally Shameless series, and we've been tackling the tough ones first. And on that note, today we're going to talk about depression. The big D, not that D, the other D. So before we go too deep into this, I really want to establish I am not a qualified psychologist or psychiatrist. I do have a psych degree. I know the basics around how the field of psychology views what they call depression. I know about major depressive disorder. I know about dysthymia and all the various versions of both chronic and fluctuating depression. But what I'm going to be talking more about today is my own opinion and view of depression, which should not be taken as scientific literature by any means. But what I hope to offer is perhaps an alternative view to depression, something that I do experience myself on a semi-regular basis. So think of this more as my personal view of depression than anything else. I really want to put that in there. This is not a substitute for any form of therapy. Okay, so let's have a look at what depression is first or foremost. So there is somewhat of a debate in the world of psychology about whether depression is an illness, like having the flu is an illness, or is it an emotional state created by the way you think, or something in between, or some combination of the two. So neuroscience would tell you it's an illness. It would tell you it is a completely biological imbalance, chemical imbalance, Some people get it, others don't. It is all down to circumstances outside of your control. Whereas perhaps some psychotherapists would argue that depression is caused by the way you manage your thinking and behavior, and there's a traceable pattern that leads you to feel depression. So either depression is reactionary, you create it yourself through the way you think and behave, or it's random. It's a chemical imbalance that you have no more control over than you do over catching a cold. Personally, I don't think it matters. Why we get depression is not as important as what it is and how we deal with it. Why we get depression may give us some clues as to how the best way to deal with it. But I think there is multiple ways to deal with it, and there are ways that you can test and experiment to find out what's right for you. And that's what I'll be talking about today. So let's look at what is depression. Forget about what causes it. Just what is it? For people who don't regularly experience, I think they often mistake it as sadness. That depression is an ultimate sadness. And while sadness is certainly involved in depression, I think is one of the kind of precipitating chronic emotional states that lead to depression, depression itself is probably better represented, I believe, by apathy, which is a lack of feeling, which is a pit of emotional despair, which is different to sadness. Sadness would be a relief from depression. At least you feel something, at least you care. Depression is the ultimate, for me, it is the absolute absence of motivation and caring. It is a feeling like nothing matters, there is no point, a hopeless, powerless, lost feeling. And with that, and it's chronic, it plays out for a long period of time. Every day you wake up, there it is again. You're hypersensitive to things going wrong. These are all confirmations that life is pointless and it sucks and so on and so forth. But it's not exactly sadness. As I mentioned in a previous video, I heard someone once describe depression as rage turned inwards. And I thought that was probably one of the best descriptions I've ever heard. Within depression is a rage. You're raging against yourself, against reality, against the world. There's a lot of really negative flavor to your thinking. You think everything sucks, you think you suck, life sucks, people suck, everything's shit, everything's unfair, everything's pointless, so on and so forth. There's some warning signs in this, because if you're feeling lost, hopeless, pointless, we can see the absence of certain emotions that I guess you'd call a cure for those feelings. For example, I might be feeling like things are pointless if I cannot experience anger. See, real anger, not rage, but anger allows me to know what my purpose is. There's a problem I want to solve. That gives me a sense of meaning. So if I don't have any sense of meaning, I'm probably lacking in anger. If I feel lost, constantly confused, can't see any way out, I'm probably lacking in curiosity, because there's always a way out. It's funny, when depression rolls over me, as it does a few times a year, my problem-solving ability just goes out the window. I can't see ways through situations that, when I'm not depressed, are totally clear, very easy to solve. So there's a lack of curiosity. I'm not really looking for solutions, though I tell myself I am. And you'll see this, like, I've worked with a lot of people who are depressed, and they're very resistant to guidance and support. And so while they're depressed, they don't follow through on any advice or anything, even if they ask for it. It's like there's a thing inside them that really is just anti-transformation, anti-change, anti-fixing something. There's a lack of curiosity as to what might work. And you feel disconnected with depression. You feel like you're all alone, isolated, cut off from the world, separate. For me, that says there's a lack of sadness. Sadness is what creates empathy, compassion, caring, connection. And it's one of the emotions that psychopaths do not experience, so that's why they don't feel like they connect to the world, and they don't really care too much about connecting. So I would say that if I had to sum up what I think depression is, it is chronic rage or chronic sadness or both that mutates into apathy. That you overwhelm yourself with so much of a powerfully painful emotion that your brain shuts off all emotion to protect yourself. Neuroscience would call this a chemical imbalance. Like I said, it doesn't matter why it happens or even really what it is, it's more about what you do about it, and I want to focus on that now. See, what I've noticed in myself and in others, there's two kind of reactions to depression. The most common is a withdrawal, a surrender, where the person withdraws into themselves, into this cave at the back of their mind, and quite sometimes literally into a cave when they go into their room and they don't leave, to fight it internally. They go to battle their demons inside their own head without the support of others. And another often complementary or different approach to dealing with depression is to pretend that it doesn't exist. So these are people like people pleaser type people who put on the big smiley clown face, go to work, carry on with their activities. They're the ones who would drown these feelings in alcohol and drugs, and they basically pretend that they're okay. And many people, of course, do both. When no one's around, they retreat into their cave. When people are around, they put on the clown mask. Both of these tactics for dealing with depression are, in my opinion, fairly ineffective and generally just make the whole thing worse. What happens in these states is you start to feed the depression with negativity. So when I get myself into a state, I'll start looking for things that are wrong and just piling it into, like, kind of absorbing it with my depression sponge. Look, there's more proof the world sucks. Look, there's more proof that things are unfair, and so on and so forth. I start looking for it and feeding it, and my behavior gives me more. I retreat to my room, no one can find me, and then I say, see, no one cares. No one's here for me, supporting me. Or I'll put on my fake mask and look at myself, manipulate people and go, look how stupid people are. Look how fucking fake I have to be just to function in this world, and so on and so forth. When I speak about myself, I'm really talking about me like years ago, the way I used to deal with depression, because I deal with it quite differently now. Of course, this can all go down to the very far end of the spectrum, which is some form of self-harm or suicidality. Yeah. It's when people kill themselves. I've dealt with a lot of suicide in my life through my work at corrections. There's often this, I want to unburden the world and I want to remove my own pain. These are the common kind of motivations. That when somebody thinks of themselves as depressed, they also think of themselves as a burden on everyone. They really do genuinely convince themselves that everyone would benefit if they just fucked off, right? And of course, the pain that they talk about with depression isn't the pain as in a feeling of pain, but more like the horror of not feeling anything. What is the point in living if you can't have an emotional response to the world? And you start to think, well, this is pretty much just death, except with real death, I don't have to experience it. And so suicide makes itself available, and self-harm can be about trying to feel something. I was having a talk with a close friend the other day about this online, and there are people who self-harm in the very traditional sense, cutting or something like that. But there's many forms of self-harm. I used to get drunk at nightclubs and bump into big guys. I kind of wanted someone to punch me in the face. Or I would go into like really high-risk driving behavior. I'd get into a car with a dangerous person and really like lose it. Or go to a party where things were really unsafe. That's self-harm. Make no doubt about it. Excessive drug use, that's self-harm. Filling your body with sugar, that's self-harm. We don't all cut, but a lot of us self-harm with depression. We're trying to feel something. We're either trying to manufacture a pleasurable state or even feel pain just to feel something. Now, overall, I think the real problem here is that we think of depression as a bad thing. I think the number one problem, especially with chronic depression, is not the feeling of depression, which is totally natural and human, but the concept that I shouldn't feel this way because A, it sucks to feel this way, and B, people think it's a disorder, an illness. So what happens is because we believe there's something wrong with being depressed, we then punish ourselves for being this way. We try to fight against it and fix it, and both of these strategies or these reactions only make it worse. So I want to open your mind to something that really helped me with it, which is, what if depression isn't bad? What if it's a good thing? What if the whole time that you've felt this, whether you've been influenced by others or come to the conclusion yourself, what if it's actually okay to be depressed and even helpful? The way to look at this is to look at what depression gives you that people who don't experience miss out on. And I found that there was two very key things, actually three key things that depression gave me. Now the first one, it's a warning. Depression doesn't hit me when I've been living in a healthy, productive, effective way. Depression doesn't hit me when I've been consistent with my values and had high integrity. So when it comes along because I've spent probably way too much time being focused on things outside my control. I've spent too much time abusing myself to try and please others. I've spent too long not accepting reality. And I've spent too long misrepresenting shame. By that I mean I focus on what I think is wrong with me for too long, instead of seeing the truth, which is that nothing's wrong with me. So when depression hits me, it's telling me, yep, you spent too much time in one or more of these areas. So firstly, it's a warning. It's not just a warning, it's a cure. Because all of those things are cured by two things. One is connecting, and two is reflecting. If I've spent too long doing something the wrong way that hurts me, I need to reflect. I need to see this. I need to look and see the pattern repeating and learn from it and change my behavior. But I need to see it first, and only reflection will let me see it. And if I feel like I'm ashamed of myself, I'm telling myself I'm wrong, what I'm really doing is disconnecting myself from other humans. I'm saying that I'm worse than them. And so the cure to that is to connect with real humans and see that I'm the same as them. So depression is telling me what I need to do. In fact, it's force-feeding me a solution because I've let something go on too long. So how do I make it work for me? So I get hit with depression about 3 times a year, maybe. It lasts a week or 2 at most. It used to be much more chronic, a kind of ongoing, low self-worth, apathy feeling. What you might call dysthymia or even chronic depression. But I didn't know what it was then. I didn't have a name for it. I just like, this is how I am. Mixed with anxiety, of course. So how do I make it work for me? What I do is when depression hits me now, I kind of say, okay, brain, I hear you. I've done the thing again, that thing that I do. My pattern that I can't seem to break of slipping down a hill, I've done that. and thank you for letting me know about it. So I go into reflection mode. I do lots of journaling. I go for lots of walks. I really reduce my task list down to almost zero, and I just take off all the pressure to achieve anything. You know, I just really go, okay, I'm in forced reflection mode now. I need to look over my life accurately, not wallow or ruminate or sort of just sit there overthinking negative thoughts. What I'm going to do is actually steer my focus towards how have I been living over the last few months? Why has the depression come to warn me that I'm doing something wrong here? So I'll have a look at that. And then connection. Having discussions with people about depression is one of the most connecting things you can do. It's one of the things where you can realize how much you're just a normal human along with all your other normal human buddies. So finding people that you can talk to about it, and it doesn't mean you go and dump on them like they're a therapist, though therapy or coaching could help in this moment. But actually just find them and just talk about what you've noticed in your reflections, to talk about how, like, I'll call up my friends at Brojo or whatever and just talk about, oh, I just got myself into a rut again. You know, I just noticed I overworked over the last few months, stressed myself out, stopped taking care of myself, and now, you know, I'm feeling depression again. It's hit me. I'm not asking for their help. I'm not asking for their advice. I'm not putting any burden on them to fix this for me. I'm just letting them know that I'm a human. And quite often the most common reaction is they tell me their story about how they do it too. So this is a slightly longer video, but depression's a slightly bigger emotion, or whatever you want to call it, to deal with. But the key ideas I want to get across to you is, what would you do differently if you believed depression was a helpful thing rather than a bad thing, rather than an illness? How would you react to it if it was helpful? How is it trying to help you? And to understand that other people out there feel it too. If you can find them and talk to them about it, even though you won't feel motivated to, I know, you won't want to do anything. You're just going to have to do it anyway, because nothing's going to break you not wanting to other than doing it. Yeah. So, I hope that helps some people. Like I said, I'm not a professional when it comes to this. I do believe that if it's really chronic and you're feeling suicidal, you should go and see a professional, and you should consider medication to get you out of the biggest of the slumps. That said, I also believe we only go that low because we see depression as a bad thing, and we don't treat it as a normal, natural human occurrence and deal with it in a helpful way. So, let me know your thoughts below with the comments. Please, heaps of trolling, I don't care. Subscribe to the YouTube channel and send through any of your questions if you want them answered to dan@brojo.co.nz. I'll catch you next time.